All right, welcome everybody. If you're not waiting in line, come grab a seat. Come sit down, we're gonna get started. Hi. Too loud. Jed, can you turn it down a little? All right, thank you. Sounding good? Okay, wonderful. Welcome everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All hail. This is different. It's wonderful to see everybody here. Welcome to the May DAG monthly meeting here in wonderful VIA. It is now Hamilton Hall. Many of us know it. My name is Eli Storch and I chair the design advocacy group. Great to see most people made it here, found the new address, and are along for the ride, and lots of new faces as well. So Brogan Austin from Scout is here. This is her space, so she's going to tell you a little bit about the space, give you a little bit of background and what's going on.
Thanks, Eli. Hello, everyone. I'm Brogan Austin, Director of Community Programs and Events with Scout, so overseeing both the Bach Building and now Village of Industry and Art. We're so excited to have you here and have DAG back for some regular programming. We hope you can stop by our front desk tonight, sign up for our newsletter so you can follow along as we continue to fill this building, the next building, with artists, designers, craftsmakers, really keep all the arts on the avenue. So please sign up for that email list at the entrance here, grab a business card, follow along, check out our calendar. And definitely don't miss Frankie's Summer Club happening right behind me. We will ask that you exit on Broad Street and enter there on 15th Street to support their staff, but hope to see you there and back again soon. So thank you, Eli, and feel free to reach out to our team with any questions. So thank you.
All right. Thank you for having us. So it's our first time in this space. We hope it's the first of many. I tend to bring a lot of not great news to these openings, so I'm going all good news today. So the first good news is that we have two new members of the DAG Steering Committee. Julie Diston, I see right there, Affordable Housing Specialist, Principal at WRT, is joining our team, and Gina Lavery, who is on vacation, so she's having a good time. But she is a member of eConsult, brings a lot of public relations, government relations, and economic consulting experience to the DAG Steering Committee. So we're very happy to have them on our team, and welcome. We do record these going back to, I think, June of 2020. So if you go on our YouTube page, you can check all of these out. I've got my handy dandy little tripod over there, and it does a really good job. So check those out. Everything that we have at DAG, we post, so you can watch it, share it, catch up on what we've been up to. So you can always check us out there. We had our last few events up at the Ethical Society. We are here for the next few months and hopefully beyond. So make sure you check out our website and those emails closely, and we will try to make any address changes in bold and extra large print, just to make sure we're being very clear with where we're going to be. So, good news in the city. George, I know you have a couple things you want to say about this, wherever George Claflin is. Oh, there you are. Come on up. So, this was something that DAG pushed for. We are thrilled that enough support rallied around both a delay in demolition on Market Street and also some real-time activation for 2026. And I know you, George, you were out there, so you want to say a few words about it?
Sure. Thank you, Eli. Let me just start by saying this is hallowed ground. Thousands of faculty and students talked about art and architecture in this space, and they also had wonderful parties, which I was privileged to crash. So hopefully we continue that tradition. I can't see it, but I was there. Oh, there it is. I can see it over here. a very unpromising kind of ugly building, and Brian Phillips has shown how it can be revitalized. He created a nonprofit called Meantime. Sorry, I was getting those confused. And the city kicked in about 1.8 million. That made a difference because the tenants are rent-free. But this helps to activate the gap in Market East. And we won't talk about the failed plans of Market East or the various ideas that took years to incubate, but this is a sign of progress. There is a zine, which I don't think was available when I was there, that you can pick up on site. It's a physical document. Other news, the Logan Fountain is finally turned on. And thanks to the Preservation Alliance for advocacy on that issue as well. Closer to our current location, the building at 16th and Spruce that has been covered with graffiti 12 stories high has been purchased by New York investors and will be renovated. So that's a very nice thing to think about because that building is in a very good location. Also can report that Ian Litwin has been promoted to be the head of, I guess what you would call community planning at the Philadelphia Planning Commission. And he fills the role that Laura Spina, one of our steering committee members, occupied for many, many years. I think that.
All right, thanks, George. So sticking on the good news category, thumbs up to SEPTA, thumbs up to Step Outside Show. So they're opening a street art show down in the Suburban Station concourse that opens. There's an opening party on the 5th and the 6th. 250 pieces of street art are going in one of the shell spaces and spilling out into the corridors down there in Suburban Station. SEPTA is working hard on that space. DAG is working with SEPTA. There may be more to talk about there at some point, but that space is better than it's being treated at the moment. And hopefully this is a sign of something to come as they're looking to add and improve and bring tenants back into that space as ridership and as foot traffic increases. So that's going to run from June 5th all the way through the end of July, so you can go see that show down there, but the two opening nights are the 5th and the 6th. Around the corner, we have a bus station, so that's pretty good news. It's clean, it's neat, it's tidy, it's all been fixed up and is in operation, which is wonderful. They did a lot to, it is a fairly bare bones renovation, but it hits all of the points of making something that's robust and will hopefully last in the sort of 5 to 10 year lifespan while a new permanent station is considered. So having that is a real asset to the city and takes away one of the black eyes on Philadelphia of where the buses had been depositing people around town. So that's one in the good news category. And then just up the block there at Reading Terminal Market, Brianna, raise your hand if you're here. I don't know that. Oh, walking in. Hey, get yourself settled if you want, but also come up and tell us about what's happening at Reading Terminal at the plaza. So there is a lot of work being done renovation-wise inside of the terminal in order to improve upon the spaces, get things ready for the World Cup and all the events that we're having this summer, but also the Filbert Street connection underneath the convention center is actually being lit. The conduit has been run, wires have been pulled, and lighting is on its way. So Brianna, I don't know your official role at Reading Terminal Market, but this is Brianna Bello, one of our steering committee members who works at Reading Terminal. So tell us about it.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I work at Reading Terminal as their community and entrepreneur engagement manager. This summer, Filbert Street was, in 2022, Filbert Street was leveled so that it would be able to serve as a festival street. And so this is the summer that we're actually activating that on an ongoing basis. For 56 days straight, it will be a pedestrian plaza. Very exciting. Additional seating, which we know like the market is in dire need of additional seating capacity. So we're expanding that to, one, accommodate locals, but also to clearly accommodate all of the different visitors that we're going to be having to the city. So fortunate enough to have, we're relighting the whole underpass. So it'll be bright as day under there. But then we'll also have lots of tables and chairs out there, a little bit of a beer garden, and then some like ambient entertainment, and some market carts too. So small micro scale businesses will be out there 4 days a week as well. So super excited for that. Come on out, support us from June through August.
Thank you. She walks in and is just ready to go. Thank you. Other interesting news in the world of adaptive reuse. Ken Weinstein and his team have acquired buildings up from LaSalle University with an eye on some interesting adaptive reuse, some arts focus, and there's a lot of buzz happening there. Evan is somewhere in the room, so if you see him, hi Evan. He's got all the dirt, so talk to Evan about what they have in store there. But great to see buildings coming back online and being reused. So that is my good news pitch of the day. And then we are also, the good news is that we are going to be back here in about a month's time. Leslie Richards has a new initiative called TRIP. And they're going to be talking all about transportation. She's coming to talk about what the program is, what the research they're working on is, what they have done, what they're planning to do. It's going to be a wide-ranging conversation that we're very excited about. So sign up on our website. We have 3 more programs after that we're going to be close to announcing. So July and August and into September, our plan is to be here, and we will let you know as soon as that news is fit for consumption. So thank you all for coming. Let's get into it. We have a wonderful program tonight. I'm going to pass off. Marcia, do you have anything else?
Since you're talking about historic buildings and the reuse of them, you're going to want to see an amazing new exhibition at the Fairmount Waterworks, which I've co-curated, in which installation artists have utilized hidden spaces and closets and stained walls, and they've come up with the most awesome site-specific installations. You should check it out.
Thank you, Marcia. So I'm going to introduce one of my colleagues on the DAG Steering Committee who's going to get us started, Eric Alippo, who is the Director of Community and Education Planning. Is that your title? Close enough? All right. At FCA, and has been heavily involved in the historic district with everything that's gone on there in terms of increased bike lanes, pedestrianization, and public space creation. So he knows about how it works here in Philly, and he's going to introduce the team and get us underway.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. I've done nothing, so you are. So, in the spirit of one of my favorite sayings, "Don't bore us, get to the chorus." I just want to say how excited we are to have the team of folks who have put together the Avenue of the Arts 2.0 initiative. And having worked in streetscapes and urban design and urban planning for many years, I am fully aware that it really does take a village, and it takes great collaboration and interaction between a lot of different stakeholders and experts. And so I would invite the team to come up here. And for those of you who don't know, the Avenue of the Arts 2.0 is a streetscape project to remake parts of South Broad Street with the major cultural anchors that exist in this area, as well as some of the new residential and commercial development that's happening as kind of the anchors to the activation of those spaces. So I'm going to just make sure I introduce everybody, and if I butcher your names, please forgive me. But we've got Sam Heritage from OJB. He's a principal in the Philadelphia office, and OJB is a multidisciplinary landscape architecture and urban planning firm with offices in 6 cities across the country. there you go, Sam. Oliver Schopper, who I just learned how to say his name properly, so I nailed it, is a practice leader in the cities and urban design practice at Gensler, a multinational design practice. Sam Scalzo is a civil engineer and project manager at Langen. They're a national engineering practice as well. And then Grace Reynolds, she dealt with all the project management for this for Aegis Property Group, an owner's rep and project management group in the Southeast Philadelphia region. Then we have Desiree Jones. I'm going to try and not fall down the stairs here. Desiree Jones is a community advocate that drives civic engagement, public policy, and you're the executive director of the Avenue of the Arts, Inc. And so she's been the major driving force behind getting this done and dusted. And then last but not least, we have Carl Dranoff, a well-known developer and entrepreneur in the city of Philadelphia, president and CEO of Dranoff Properties. And he's got transformative projects in many cities, but in Old City here, West Philadelphia, Filter Square, and also South Broad Street right here. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to the team. Please give them a warm welcome. Yeah.
Leave this here for now. It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for showing up in such large numbers. We will take about 30, perhaps a little bit longer minutes to walk you through this project, how it came about, what's important in it, what we did to get to this point, and then go to question and answers, and hopefully there will be plenty of them. Maybe one slide forward. Oh yeah, let me take this back. Yeah, so structured in really 4 parts. We want to recall Avenue of the Arts through the years of what got us to the motivation of doing what this project is. We'll talk about the vision that we set out to do and how we got all the good input together to be able to formulate that vision, and then how we implement this with what you see actually right outside the building, the first block that is being built right now, the median of it, and we're extremely excited to see this happening. And then of course how the future will look like for this entire block that you see, and then hopefully for other blocks as well. And with this, I'm going to turn it over to Carl.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. And I'm here in my capacity as chairman of the board of Avenue of the Arts. So I'm going to give you a quick history lesson on the Avenue as kind of creating context for the amazing plan that you'll hear about from Oliver and his team. And I'm going to go back to 1991. Now, I know some of you out there are young and don't remember 1991, but I also see a bunch of aging hippies out there like myself. So you'll remember in 1991 that the city was in dire straits. We had a tremendous recession in the late 80s, and financial institutions were failing. PSFS failed in 1990. It was taken over by the Resolution Trust Corporation. And the city itself was actually taken over by PICA, which is a state agency that was in charge of the city's finances. And we had cataclysmic changes. And one of the best things that came out of that is the election of Edward G. Rendell as mayor. And he really was responsible for changing the course of the city. The city was on a downward trend in many categories. There were some green shoots along the way, but in general, we were suffering from massive job losses and loss of confidence, and people were moving. Edward Rendell changed that. He had 5 or 6 major policies that we still enjoy today. For example, creating a convention center, creating a hotel industry. If you remember, he promised when he was elected mayor to get a national convention into Philadelphia. And he almost did it. He was mayor until 1998. In the year 2000, we did get the Republican convention. And the reason we got it was we built 2,000 hotel rooms. And so that was an economic stimulation to build all those hotels. And then there was the Navy Yard and 10-year tax abatement and all these policies that came into play. And one of the most important, and in my view, the most important, was the Avenue of the Arts. It was an idea that was not original, and Ed brags about it because he's a great leader and he's not bashful about using other people's ideas, but this was an idea that was created by the Old City Development Corporation, which was a predecessor to what is now the Central Philadelphia Development Corporation. I see some people nodding that may remember those days. And there was a study done. It was right on the shelf for him to pull off and use. It was renaming South Broad Street the Avenue of the Arts. Now, that was a bit of an exaggeration because we didn't really have all that much arts. We had the Academy of Music, which was, of course, performing arts, and we had some scattered arts organizations. We had the Sound of Philadelphia, which had its headquarters at Broad and Spruce, where Art House now stands, and that was Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff. And there was the Clef Club and a few other scattered organizations. But his idea was to pull all this together and really use arts as a springboard for economic growth and to make South Broad Street an economic engine. And there's been an evolution, I would say, over the last 30 years, and that's exactly where we are today. But there were a lot of bumps along the way. For starters, he had to float a bond issue, which he did do. It was $25 million. And I worked for Ron Rubin at the time in the early 90s. So I saw all of this unfolding from my office at the corner of Broad and Walnut. And you could look up and down the avenue, and Ron was an inside player, so I got to go to the meetings with David Cohen and Rendell and plotting out all these strategies. And it was a gamble that arts could be that economic engine. And the big, I'd say, milestone was the creation of the Kimmel Center. And Ed lobbied and lobbied for years with the state legislature and finally got Governor Casey to give the city $200 million. The city kicked in some money. There were a bunch of private donors. The facility cost $275 million, and the Kimmel Center was built. And that really was the changing agent for the Avenue of the Arts, because with that Kimmel Center, we then really did become the center of gravity for the entire region on the arts scene. And soon to follow after that was the Suzanne Roberts Theater and the Wilma Theater, and of course the Academy of Music was there, and the Merriam Theater was there, very, I'd say, over its age span, and it had to be rehabbed, which it was, and it's now the Miller Theater. So we've got now 6 theaters on South Broad Street, and it's the second largest confluence of performing arts in North America after New York City. So we've really got bragging rights to a great art scene now, and not just performing arts. So I left Ron Rubin and formed my own company in the mid-90s, and one of my first projects was on the Avenue of the Arts. And so I've never really left the Avenue of the Arts. I've been here for more than 30 years, developing up and down the street. And I'd say that the changing point for the Avenue in my involvement was the creation of Symphony House. Because as Ed Rendell said to me, he said, Carl, all we can do as a public agency and as a mayor is to set the table. What we really need is private investment. And it's critical that we get the private investment, because that's what the economic engine will be. And I sort of turned the tables on him because he was now governor, and I needed money to build the Suzanne Roberts Theater because it was not financeable. It was going to be donated to a nonprofit agency, the Philadelphia Theater Company. And I did get the money. I did build the building. The Suzanne Roberts Theater has been there for 20 years now, and it's thriving, more so ever today than before. And other developers came to South Broad Street, and we began to see, and I'm going to take you through a little bit of history, and I'll do this very quickly, but you'll see this gas station at the corner of Broad and Pine. And as you look up Broad Street, many of those buildings still exist. Of course, you see City Hall, and you see the building that we're in, which is right behind the 1925 automobile. And you see the Wiley Church, and the building at the corner at 337 South Broad, which is now being converted into loft apartments. I think I'm going in the wrong direction. Let's see if we can get this to work. Okay, so now it's 1992, and things are beginning to happen. The improvements are just going in. You can see the light poles prominently, and you can see the Kimmel Center, which was completed in. Thank you. Is that better? Yes. Sorry. Okay. You can see City Hall, you can see the lights, you can see the Kimmel Center, and the Avenue of the Arts is moving along. This is me in the Kimmel Center looking down South Broad Street. This would be 2003, before Symphony House was started. You can see the parking lot at the southwest corner of Broad and Pine. You can see the old YMHA, which became part of University of the Arts, and it's pretty drab. Not much happening. This is an aerial view from 2003. You'll notice the Comcast towers aren't built yet. Art House isn't built. Symphony House is not there, and a lot more to come, but we still had a pretty good skyline. And this is a conglomeration of some of the buildings you see on Broad Street, including many of the buildings near City Hall, which were part of Philadelphia's financial center. Remember, when these buildings were built in the 1910s and 20s, Philadelphia was a financial center. We had a lot of big banks. Anthony J. Drexel, who created Drexel University, my alma mater, he was J.P. Morgan's partner, and he was responsible for many of the financial institutions, for the germination and growth of those institutions. And the buildings are still there, but they're being used differently. And then we have new buildings coming into play, like Art House, and you can see the project I just mentioned at the corner of Broad and Pine. This would be the northeast corner, formerly Anderson Hall, University of the Arts, being converted into apartments. And then as we go further south on South Broad, we see South Star Loft, 777 South Broad. Those are buildings I did. And then at the corner of Broad and Washington, you see Post Brothers' new building. You see two supermarkets. So we have a Giant and a Sprouts at the corner of Broad and Washington. Pretty significant. I think I spoke to Ed Rindell actually earlier today, and he's just so proud of everything that's happened on the Avenue. It couldn't be envisioned 30 years ago, but it's happened. And of course, in the middle part of the Avenue, we have other uses, things that we want to change, like gas stations and fast food. We have the Philadelphia High School for the Performing Arts. We have the Tinley Church, and we have some townhouses that sort of look like some of the townhouses that we see driving down South Broad Street towards the stadiums. So that was the vision fulfilled. But we had one big pothole. Can anyone guess what that pothole was? That pothole was the pandemic. The pandemic occurred, as we know, it began in 2019, and it took 3 years for it to be eventually lifted. And during those 3 years, and I was building Art House at the time, and the building was getting higher and higher, and there were fewer and fewer people coming to South Broad Street and to the city. And a lot of us were wondering what the future of the city would be. Would people come back? Would the Kimmel Center come back? Would we be vibrant? Would we be able to compete with the city, with the suburbs rather? And there was a lot of, fog out there. And I, one day, decided to call my friends in New York at Gensler because I had an idea. I was in Chicago the prior year, and the Magnificent Mile was coming back pretty well. And if you remember, that's when Millennial Park was built and we had the Bean. And I began to wonder, and being a member of the Avenue of the Arts board, the whole board began to wonder, could we do something as wonderful and as big as the Magnificent Mile here in Philadelphia? And could Broad Street be that street? And we decided to have a reality test. So we invited our friends from Gensler to come down. And I remember Oliver, we walked from City Hall to Washington Avenue, and from Washington Avenue back to City Hall, up and down. It took us about 3 hours. It was a positively sweltering July day. I wasn't sure we would even make it, but we did. And we stopped to converse at the end of this tour. And I said to Joe, your partner, and to Oliver, are we crazy, or can we do what I would like to do, which is to turn South Broad Street into a world-class street that would be a peer among great streets of the world, like the Champs-Élysées, like the Magnificent Mile, and I could go on and on. And could this be the key to reviving the city? And could this be part of drawing people back, not just because we have arts institutions, but because it could be a beautiful street where people would want to stay and linger, and tourists that are coming into Philadelphia would consider it to be a tourist attraction, and it could be like Millennial Park and the Bean and Magnificent Mile is to Chicago. That's what our intent was on the Avenue of the Arts. So it took a while to get to the starting gate, a lot of imagination, but I'm going to turn this over to Oliver now to describe what Gensler did, how they did it, and if we have an opportunity during the Q&A, we can talk a little bit about how we raised the money and where we're going from here. So ladies and gentlemen, I'm turning this over to Oliver Schopper from Gensler.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. So we didn't rehearse it this way, but talking about the pandemic, it was actually also for us an extremely interesting time, simply because we started to think about quality public realm more than ever, because it showed us that the outdoors, especially urban outdoors, are extremely valuable, and sort of set a baseline for expectations of what public urban realm in cities like Philadelphia needs to do. And in the aftermath, we saw it happening in many other cities. And Carl mentioned Paris. It's one of the great examples, of course. The use of public space, always sort of a basic characteristic of witnessing urban life and participating in it, but then many other cities, of course, as well. And what a better place to do this and recall this than Avenue of the Arts here in Philadelphia, to not just connect to the arts focus that was already there, so a good reason to amplify the DNA of Avenue of the Arts, specifically performing arts, but also widen this into a space that invites people to linger and simply make it a quality space that becomes a destination
becomes even the front yard and the backyard for local residents, becomes an exciting space to be, and with it economic development, and with it the kind of diversity and vibrancy that we all want cities to live from. And when we formulated this vision, of course this idea of center stage became an operational word for us, because we felt that Avenue of the Arts does have the makeup of this. It just needed a nudge, and it just needed a repair, and it just needed attention to the detail that allows us to have, in a way, minimum impact or effort, but have a maximum output of that. Here it is. So one of the things that we did, of course, was having many conversations with Avenue of the Arts, with stakeholders, to inform or share this vision and hear what's on people's mind in terms of what else does Avenue of the Arts need to be doing. And it's a very interesting process, of course, because it gives us information that is not available in any other form. But it also is the beginning of what I would call a big balancing act, or an act of alignment, not just alignment of interests, but alignment of possibility, given the constraints that exist within a street space, within funding, within a regulatory framework, and the process of making these things happen. But to gauge and do it in a way that we feel there's positive outcome for everybody who gets to enjoy the public space. And as an output of this, we condensed this into 5 goals that the Avenue, at a minimum, I would say, would have to allow to happen. I mentioned one of those: attract and retain visitors, residents, and of course businesses on the ground floor and in the buildings along the Avenue. But of course, support and expand also the arts on the Avenue. It's nothing new to the Avenue, but in a sense, and this is where we coined the term Avenue of the Arts 2.0, there's always a way to make things more poignant and more deliberate and intentional and support this. And I think this idea of public realm in a support function in this context is very, very important. And then other things that we heard along the way as we talked about these types of improvements: enhance connectivity, safety, and wayfinding. Safety, a big issue or a big topic that we heard over and over again. And we'll talk about what this means in the context of doing outdoor or public realm improvements, and the relationship of pedestrians to traffic. And the quality of space that allows you actually to feel invited to stay and not feel that you need to hold your breath and get away from the Avenue as quickly as possible. A big thing and wish and something that is kind of pretty clear, and we hear it really globally everywhere, is greenery and a nod to a resilient, environmentally, socially, and economically resilient environment. So solutions that support the civic infrastructure, that support the infrastructure below the street level that we can see, and responds in sort of multifaceted way to the requirements of creating a more sustainable environment. And lastly, and perhaps more importantly, and almost summarizing the other 5 or the other 4 goals, is be truly inclusive and create a welcoming place for all. And I think the idea of providing public space for the diverse population of Philadelphia and the diverse population that comes to Philadelphia, it's very, very important and paramount. I mentioned before we called it center stage, and center stage was just the operational word to get us thinking about how we should pull this off. But in our analysis, of course, we understood right away that it's the buildings, it's the functions along the Avenue that are important and give it a topic, but it's also almost a district, and the adjacent blocks are important to consider, and we spent a lot of time walking around and mapping and analyzing to understand really what this district between 15th and 13th Street means and how it relates to the avenue. And certainly the idea of connectivity across equally important, and just for orientation, I failed to mention this, north is on the side, so top-down movement is actually east-west movement, but connectivity across the avenue and providing a safe environment to do this and an incentive to come is equally important here. So the Avenue of the Arts from City Hall down to Washington Avenue is about 15 blocks, and to kind of tailor our responses, and I'll talk a little bit about what a flexible framework in this regard means. We identified really 3 different character zones. From City Hall down, it's the civic core that feels like a very mature inner city classic environment, and you've seen the pictures, and of course you know the avenue. Then the theater district from Locust to south, roughly, that is really dominated by performing arts and other arts facilities and institutions. And then south of South Street, what we call neighborhood crossroads, where the avenue, I think, has a great potential to be changed to live up to those goals that we all set, the vision of the avenue, because there's quite a bit of flexibility to think about the best use of public space in those streets. You see the word pilot area here because we also wanted to understand that the avenue is, on the one side, it's a $150 million project over 15 blocks, but why don't we start in a way that allows us to make a statement, of course, demonstrate that it's possible to do this, but at the same time create a precedent that we learn from as a team, and that continues this idea of refining something that I think under many circumstances is an evolving project, and we want to understand this as evolving project because it's not about the idea of a team or the idea of a small group of people. It's a true reflection of the values of a city like Philadelphia that should reflect itself on the avenue. So one way of approaching this was that we looked at a number of different blocks, and this is too small to see in detail here, but you'll see other imagery that explains this. The goal of this exercise was to say, what are the kit of parts that we can assemble that is flexible enough to respond to the different conditions that you have along Avenue of the Arts. Of course, it's a unique right-of-way because it's a two-way street, right? Most Philadelphian streets are one-way streets, so it has a median that separates 2 different directions of traffic. It has, of course, intersections, and it has actually quite a wide sidewalk. And the width of the sidewalk as a space for that stage, we took very, very seriously. And we also said that can we even widen it, and can we sort of balance between the interests of traffic, public transportation, businesses, and pedestrians for public quality public realm? Where do we strike the balance? And this was an early version of this. It's mostly about new ideas about placing art. It's about a certain level of consistency within the flexibility of approaching the avenue. It's a response to what can happen on the sidewalk itself, and it's a critical lens to what can happen, what we call the flex zone. And if you recall, Avenue of the Arts has 2 travel roads of traffic in each direction, and one like a flex space. Sometimes people park there, sometimes it's a drop-off zone, sometimes it's a bus station, although the buses actually, what we observe, typically don't pull into that lane. It's a space that we thought it should not be a free-for-all for someone who or for abuse, let's say, it's valuable space, and we want to make sure that we assign a function to this, again, within this flexible framework, because there are requirements to keep that lane open. And you'll see that how we responded to that in the design framework. And then, of course, what we call above the avenue. So art integration, we want to, in the long term, take this up a level. We think about all kinds of art installations. In the first version, we'll have a sculpture mounted on the median. We think about that on the sidewalks as well, but perhaps even suspended over the avenue in some way. So early on, to illustrate this, we worked with a lot of visual materials. This more helped us to provoke reactions and be truly illustrative of what this could mean. We are here at the end of a concept design phase, at which we decided, let's focus on one block for now, and this is the block that we're at here between Pine Street and Spruce Street. And that one block will be our test case. We even split this into two phases. What you see happening out there is phase 1A, it's the median. Phase 1B, the sidewalks will follow. With this, I will hand it over to the team and to Sam Heritage at OJB and to Sam Scalzo at Langen, who have been great partners in this to make this project a reality, to talk about the process of how we took it to what you see out there today.
Thank you, Oliver. So Sam Scalzo and I are going to go back and forth a little bit, but what we hope to do in this next chapter is kind of really peel back the curtain a little bit and start to share a bit of the story about... Better now? Sorry about that. And peel back the curtain and share a little bit of the story about how we took the vision that Oliver and Carl just spoke so eloquently about, and how we began to develop the design and really work through the process. So this is a story of two acts, essentially, that we're going to go through, and Oliver highlighted it's broken up into two phases. But the first part that we wanted to highlight is really kind of as a team, as we embarked on kind of really developing the design, we went out and really ground truthed the existing conditions on site, surveyed, and really kind of looked and embellished and understood kind of what is going on out there. And in the focus zone, we really kind of in the pedestrian realm, we focused on three areas: the clear zone, the furnishing zone, and the flex lane of Broad Street. And so, as I mentioned, we went through, we analyzed, we surveyed, and we validated all the existing conditions on site, and used that to start to build kind of a framework of opportunities, and really how we can take that design vision that Oliver highlighted and be able to build upon that. And so we started to highlight how we can protect sheltered realm for pedestrians on the streetscape by building planters up, how we modulate those, how we integrate some of the existing plaques in all those situations, and create spaces for function and pre-function as well. With that, while we're doing that analysis, we started to think about that bigger picture a little bit and start to talk about how we kind of create spaces that are flowing and moving and connective up and along the streetscape. And we took a lot of inspiration from the movement of the grid of the city, but as well as music as well, and how that undulates and moves up and down, and use that to inspire some of the planting, the landscape design, and some of the movements throughout the space as we go forward. And as we did that, we started to craft out a series of typologies with the planters. And a lot of this was predicated on some of the collaborative understanding that we had with some of the jurisdictions to be tangible about how we interact with the streetscape without creating too many conflicts with the existing infrastructure on site. And so what we started out with is these four typologies that you see here: smaller scale tactical moves, larger scale planters where you can start to integrate trees, larger trees, and carving out spaces and shelter for programming. And then also being able to modulate that and break that to utilize some of the existing infrastructure, whether it's the SEPTA subway grates or there's existing light poles, and work with those. And then the type 4, which we'll talk about a little bit more in the Act 2, and is the median itself and those larger scale planters. And as we worked through those, in each unique zone, we started to really kind of develop that planter typology and those kitted parts. And as Oliver mentioned, with the pilot block, the idea is to be able to scale some of these ideas and move them up and down the block as we move forward in the future. But as you can see, we start to tessellate and create variety, options, and optionality as well. So with that, as we started to craft the design a little bit, we had a lot of work, and I think what Sam's going to highlight here in a second as I pass it over to him is the spirit of collaboration. And so obviously there's a much bigger team than just up here that has been working on the project and is actively working on the project. And not only was a lot of collaboration between the design team and Avenue of the Arts, but also a lot of work with a lot of the state and the local jurisdictions to really kind of work through their needs and their expectations to be able to kind of enact and move forward with the design.
Yeah, so being within the right-of-way, we have a lot of overlapping jurisdiction, like Sam was saying. To name a few, PennDOT, Philadelphia Streets, the Water Department, and SEPTA. So once some of these planners started to take place, we stepped in and working with the different agencies started to hone in some of the restraints. And one of the most notable restraints was the sight lines, which were determined based on pedestrian and vehicles and trucks. And once you start looking left, right, up and down the boulevard, as well as the different streetlights, being cognizant of City Hall with the offset streetlights that we have to work with. And then with collaboration with OJB, we started to figure out, okay, well, maybe the plants need to be shorter here, the tree limbs need to be higher here, and how it all works together. And then when we start to look at the existing condition and the flex lanes, we have to start thinking, all right, well, how does the water draining in the street today get to the existing infrastructure, and how are we going to collaborate and prove to, in this instance, PennDOT, streets, and the water department that the water is eventually going to get underneath these planters and into their systems. So OJB helped us, and we put together these planter pipes and how the water is going to get underneath, and how these module planters are going to be able to come in and come out if for any reason any existing infrastructure needs to get accessed.
So through this process, and Oliver highlighted this before too, as we were moving through the design process, we went from looking at the street as one whole project, we broke it out to separate phases. And so around this time, about a year and a half ago, we phased it. And so the next chapter of the story is the median in phase 1A, which we'll talk about in a little bit more detail, is being installed and built right now as we speak. With the median, the streetscape work, and the pedestrian realm following closely along in phase 2 or phase 1B. So as Oliver highlighted, we wanted to build on those high-minded goals for the Avenue of the Arts and build those into the median and have those as kind of those day one implementations moments. And the three goals that we wanted to align with and utilize within the median is robust planting interventions, elevate the planter in the landscape both physically and proverbially, as well as that opportunity to highlight and integrate art as well. And so, as you see here in the views, we have what was the existing condition, and then also what we had started to study and show at the future with kind of elevating the landscape in the median in that design. So, as the story kind of unfolds, and as we started to work through the detailing of the design, the idea was to create kind of a very graceful streetscape and a lot of that was elevating the landscape, finding lush planting, integrating the artwork, and really kind of having beautiful transitions at the noses at the north and south that isn't blunt or too abrupt as you're moving through. And as you can see here, a lot of work and time has gone into really kind of building out and studying those profiles. And Sam's going to highlight a little bit more of the backstory on this too. Working with PennDOT, for example, to make sure that we're able to kind of thread that needle to meet vehicular and pedestrian safety, while also maximizing landscape space to really take advantage of that landscape opportunity as you see here, as well as respecting a lot of the kind of the jurisdictional sight lines and the needs and the safety needs in that design as well.
So we wanted to highlight here in the presentation of one of the restraints and hurdles we came across that we worked through. So on the left side of the screen was our original planner design that we went in with, which we proposed the PennDOT and streets, and then we had to work with them along with OJB to develop what is now out there today, which is going to be a modified standard PennDOT single-face barrier, but it's going to look pretty. So we have some curbs, we have some profiling of the median. So in working with PennDOT and OJB, we figured out a way to meet the demands of PennDOT, the safety requirements of PennDOT, while also maximizing your planter area and planter median.
I would say this is, a great example of a bit of the spirit of collaboration with PennDOT. I took quite a few meetings to kind of work through that process. And I think what the exciting outcome is kind of taking that design, that very utilitarian streetscape design, and really elevating it quite a bit to kind of integrate a wall safety system that still works for a vehicular situation while elevating the aesthetic as well. I think the other thing that was important too that we really keyed in on is really kind of aligning to the existing aesthetic of the streetscape. And one of the early decisions that we made is to take a look at what Philadelphia is using for its curbs. And we worked with the streets department, kind of located where they source all their stone. And so the walls and the median and the nosing is all crafted out of that same stone. So we start to align to that spirit and that aesthetic on the streetscapes that we see on Broad Street and throughout the streets of Philadelphia as well. So the other thing we want to talk about a little bit is how that landscape something that in this instance it's an isolated landscape situation, right? And so we want to make sure that we're using adaptive and native species that are resilient to kind of the tough conditions that we're going to have, or that they're going to have on the streetscape. Understanding kind of the maintenance needs, right? Making sure they're cognizant of this as well throughout the years. And so what we did do as a team, we started looking at kind of the existing context streetscape while working within the existing framework. The city has for street tree requirements. And so what we started to come up with is this modular concept that we intend to explore on Avenue of the Arts. But really, this street tree canopy of 3 to 4 tree species that are dominant within the median, heading south, that really start to build and rebuild the urban forest framework as well. And with that, too, we also wanted to understand and kind of craft that street experience, right? And so a lot of what we started to build is knowing where our block is. That I mentioned is the buildings and the architecture kind of scales up on the street. We kind of create the urban forest in the center and then start to respect that on streetscapes as that evolves as well. Now, another good story that I think Sam's going to talk about a little bit as well is the integration of the landscape and really the requirements that we needed to meet and how that impacted not only the landscape but then also the art and the sculptural integration as well.
So our friends, the sightlines again. So with these sightlines, we had to look at the design vehicle speed, the requirements of looking for a driver to see the offset streetlights, and how we're going to implement the sculptures at the noses. So we didn't want to go back to streets and PennDOT every time a sculpture was installed. So what we did in collaboration with OJB again is define that envelope that we will always be able to work in to meet again the jurisdictional requirements of the sightlines, while also the goals of the team and the Avenue of the Arts and that vision.
That's great. That's cool. Yeah, and so this is a good example of how our team kind of collaborated quite a bit with PennDOT to kind of proof out some of those concepts to ensure that the art elements as they come online start to kind of fit within those jurisdictional requirements. And so we just spent quite a bit of time studying those viewpoints and kind of proofing out those ideas as well. So we want to take a little bit and talk about kind of the future of the projects that we just talked about, phase 1A and phase 1B. As you all can see, what's really exciting right now, and you can see this as you walk out the door, is this is coming to life as we see it right now, which is really exciting. And so all of our teams have been involved, working with our construction partners at LF Driscoll, have been doing a great job of kind of working through this process and starting to implement all of it. And so we wanted to share a few highlights. So obviously you can see kind of the first steps of building up the walls in the median have gone in place and are actively kind of getting set and finished off. So you can see kind of the granite curb, that matches the existing curb stock of the city of Philadelphia. And as you can see kind of how that transition starts to flare up to the center, that kind of creates that median experience as well. You can kind of see a lot of craftsmanship, working with some of the local stonemasons to fabricate and install this as well. And then in addition, kind of working with our fabrication partners on the second level of those planters. This is kind of a shop visit that we did about a month and a half ago, inspecting the work they've done as they've started to fabricate that, and hopefully in the next few weeks we'll start to see those come in place pretty soon. And then in addition, in the landscape, our teams have kind of traveled both near and far to select the material, make sure that we're selecting the appropriate material to the design intent. And hopefully after those walls come in very shortly, we'll start to see those come in place as well. So the next thing we wanted to talk about too is phase 1B. So as we were talking about kind of what's actively getting built, our teams have started to kind of work very hard in the background to start to kind of rethink and start to kind of escalate and start to develop the design of 1B. And hopefully in the near future, we'll start to be able to kind of start to engage that process of approvals and see that come online in the very near future as well. So share some of those studies as well. So with that, I wanted to hand it over to Desiree to talk a bit about, the next steps. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Oh, I was like, it said, I thought my voice made it go to thank you. All right. Yes, I'm Desiree Jones, and we're going to talk about the future of the Avenue of the Arts. You learned about the past, where we started in 1991 all the way up to now, and how do we build the actual median and the different. Every time I hear about how the different things came together to make this happen, it's exciting. So we are not going, we're going to continue the excitement past the median being built and the sidewalks being expanded, the curbs being bumped out. The goal is to make this a livable space outside. You heard about the pandemic. We realized that you have to go outside. So we need to give people a space to enjoy the outside. And the space is going to have, where we have music, different things throughout the years. We've already started with a banner project. So when you leave and exit, please take the time to look at the banners. And these were 10 people that were from Philadelphia, artists, that we commissioned to put up the banners. And actually we were able to give a stipend to be a part of the Avenue of the Arts. And that's not going to be the end. We're going to continue. And then once the median is built and you want to come back next month and see the final project, it's not going to be done. We're going to go into the future and build a statue in the middle. So see what that looks like in the fall. It's a continuation. This is going to be a community installation of art with businesses and nonprofits on the Avenue and outside of the Avenue. So we're going to partner with everyone here and join, like VIA, continue the growth. We have Temple coming to the Avenue. All these things are moving the Avenue forward, and we want to have excitement and bring tourism back to the South Broad Street. I would thank you for taking the time to learn about the Avenue of the Arts, and thank you to this wonderful team who's put this together and to break it down and share the whole project with you.
All right, thank you, team. This is a really exciting project. Thank you for sharing your vision with us. We are going to take some questions from the audience, so if anybody would like to ask a question, you can just sort of step up here to this lower microphone that Eli is in front of. Just line up and we can start taking questions. I do want to kick it off. A couple things that you said really struck me is that this is a kit of parts. It's about flexibility and partnership. And I guess if each of you or a couple of you could respond to the idea of like standing here at the I'm going to say the beginning of this process that's going to build and build and build. What is maybe a lesson learned from each of your perspectives about how this might be scalable even beyond South Broad Street, and like what are the ingredients that make these things come together? I don't know who wants to take that. Well, I don't know if it'll reach you. You got to stand up. There you go.
I think that goes to why we decided to do a pilot block first, because that is a linchpin to building support for the project. And getting the initial support from our elected officials and from our government officials and from our regulatory agencies was difficult, because people, they have anxiety over change. We all know that. But this really was talked about in beautification and economic development terms. And we were able to get small amounts of money for the design to begin with. And our goal was to prove that this was a viable concept. And we were lucky in that we have very good elected officials. Our city council people from the 1st and 2nd district, they wanted to see this project happen. It took a lot of lobbying at the state level to get support. But at the end of the day, people started to envision a beautiful tree-lined boulevard and the imagery of somebody driving into Philadelphia from the suburbs, perhaps, coming down the Ben Franklin Parkway and going around City Hall and picking up that same level of trees and green and, you know, recreation areas, and combining that with the arts. It began to capture people's imagination. The beauty of this project is that we can do this block by block, and every block on South Broad Street is different. I showed slides in the beginning with the varying uses of different types of buildings and different loading zones and different bus stops. And we're able to adapt each block to the circumstances that are. And by June, the end of June, our Phase 1A will be complete. The trees are already selected. The dirt is going in to our center median in early June. Everything will be planted by the end of June, and we'll be able to celebrate a successful conversion of Phase 1A. And that in itself will bring us support from the future sections. Anybody want to add to that?
Maybe just one quick comment about lesson learned. I think one of the big hurdles that we needed to overcome is to believe that this is a real project and not another study. And the work, the trust that we built with city agencies along the way, I think helped this. And I think there's a very different momentum now going into raising funds for future blocks than there were before this started. So I think the big impact of this first block is that we proved that it can happen.
Proof of concept.
Yeah, great. All right, so we've got some more questions here. Go ahead, sir.
So I just want to say thank you for hanging in there for cities after the pandemic, because that was a real concern for coming back to the city. I just want to express my interest in the importance of greenery. I see a lot of greenery being installed. I just want to know and be assured that there's a comprehensive plan for management, maintenance of greenery, a comprehensive irrigation plan for the greenery that is going to be installed, because I see so much greenery start out in projects and then never make it past 2, 3, 4 years. And that's such a key component there.
I think there's two sides, right? And then I think Desiree probably wants to chime in too. Yeah.
So it's a great question. There's a permanent irrigation system that's going to be installed with this landscape, so in terms of watering. And then also we've worked pretty closely with Avenue of the Arts, as well as some of the streets department jurisdictions, to come up with a management plan and maintenance plan and an agreement in place with the contractor that's going to be kind of on board to, once construction completes, to take on maintenance. Correct. Yeah, they're under contract.
We couldn't get permits without a maintenance.
Yeah, essentially, yeah.
So you heard the price tag of $150 million. $10 million is an endowment to help continue the operation of the plants. And we're currently have a budget now that we're in charge of from Broad and Market to Washington. So it is an expansion of that, and it is the responsibility of Avenue of the Arts, and it's been turned over to us from the city.
Just several months ago, President Fry at the university presented his vision to this very group, not here, but at the AIA. And his vision is, of course, streetscaping and landscaping from the Terra building on Broad Street up to the main campus of Temple and on to the medical campus, Meadow Valley and beyond. Is there an effort to coordinate with President Fry in your effort to improve Broad Street? I think that's very important, because the two plans actually overlap, okay, starting at Carroll. So that's my question.
Thank you, and I'm thankful to report that we're currently actually talking to Temple University to see how we can help. And there's certainly this awareness that we don't need to reinvent the wheel every block, and that we speak to everybody who wants to do improvement to make sure that the consistency that we want to do is actually happening.
One important factor is we have a representative of Temple University on our board, so the correlation and the discussions are very, very close.
Thank you. So, yes. Speak into the microphone. Yeah, it is.
One of the troubles we've had downtown with the Avenue of the Arts and its generations is its basement, our concourse, which we love to leave as is. The question is, how will you integrate the lower level, the basement of Broad Street into your design? How will you bring light from above down through essentially the roof of Broad Street down to our concourse? And will you work with any of the traffic designers to introduce smart traffic lights to our great city? Thank you.
Who would like to take that one?
I can, at this point, I can certainly give you a partial answer. The first answer is that the concourse is on our mind, of course. We at Gensler in our Philadelphia office has worked actually prior to this with SEPTA to explore what can happen with the concourse to activate it and not like make it a better space, not necessarily change it, but make it a better space.
Just say we've been talking about that for 40 years. Please put it on the top of your agenda.
Yes. And I think the other question is Mayor Mamdani in New York keeps saying, we'll take that back to our team because there are certain elements that are simply out of the scope of what Avenue of the Arts can shoulder, and smart traffic lights are part of this. But I think the more we bring it up and bring it to the people that can respond to this, the better.
I just want to say that SEPTA has been one of our closest allies, and it turns out that the concourse has a lot of leaks in it, and they looked upon us and our project as solving those problems because they were mostly coming from the median strip. And when we finish with the median strips up and down the avenue, there will be no more leaks because we're waterproofing every section as we go along. So that will at least pave a better path forward for use of those concourses.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for sharing your vision with us. So many things that I really love about what you showed us. There was a lot of talk about sightlines in this presentation, a lot about car sightlines, and I want to ask a question about human sightlines, because one of my favorite things as I walk down Broad Street is to actually get stuck in the movie, because then you get to take in the view of the most beautiful city in most beautiful building in our city, which is City Hall. And just north of the site, I often just stand there and take pictures. And I see people take pictures there, even wedding photos of people with City Hall in the background. So I wanted to ask that question about, is that an idea that you have? What can you say about the preservation of that sightline of City Hall that's not blocked by trees, but instead you see it block out to it?
So the simplest way to answer that is we're not going to have trees in the center median any further north. That is the protected view shed. So this is the first moment going south where we can start to integrate trees in the median. So we wanted to take that opportunity to do that because we think it's going to create a moment.
I would like to add, that's where the bump outs on the curb, so you can actually it's a safer distance to get to the median to take the picture. That's the designs for that as well.
All right.
And thank you very much for your presentation. And I just want to make a comment on history. how COVID had you look and re-examine the cityscape. Back in 1792, 1793, when Philadelphia experienced the great epidemic of yellow fever. Thomas Jefferson relooked at the cities and he came up with a checkerboard square. So if you're familiar with that, he said it should be open spaces, developed spaces, and open spaces. I know that we can't completely come to that, but what you're doing is something akin. Thank you very much.
All right.
I was really interested in the talk beginning with Carl talking about Henry Mill, who was the inspiration for all of this. And a word that didn't get used here, but Edwin Mill was certainly an exemplar of it, was passion. And I think it's very important to understand that there's a piece of Philadelphia history that's really not part of the plan, although it may be, and we haven't gotten to it yet. Philadelphia has an extraordinary black history, and not one single person in this panel mentioned that in any of this discussion. But if you examine the history of Philadelphia's black culture, you would find that that section of the Avenue of the Arts, below the Arts District, what we would call the Arts District, is actually an equivalent to what would have been called the Black Renaissance of Harlem. There is the Clef Club, which was brought into existence by a group of musicians who were being excluded from the white unions. There is the Civic Temple, which Carl mentioned, has an auditorium that holds 3,200 people. The man who started that temple, Tinsley, hired Ballinger to build that building, leading architect in Philadelphia. He was also the person who was a hymn writer who wrote the song, I Shall Overcome Someday. Might be familiar, but Martin Luther King used that song. There's the Greenery Workshop and Gallery, a collection of several thousand of the most important black printmakers in America that has never been explored. Been there for 50 years. We had a private exhibition at Philadelphia as well. I think what you put here in starting point is a series of ideas that need to have developed in different ways than you're taking it. The details are important, but the history and the passion of this place is not part of the presentation, and that kind of conversation needs to be part of this discussion. Philadelphia doesn't have a history district for the black culture of this Philadelphia area, and yet this is the center of every single major black musician playing in clubs that are no longer north and south. So these are points of your consideration that are important. But equally important is what's going the other way. This is about, as you're talking about, that area south of Market Street. North of Market Street, there are significant institutions, and I think that John Fry getting involved in this is a really important player in that activity. But at Broad and Master, 3 blocks from Temple University, is a building that was owned by Edward Forrest, a very important actor. It's the home of Freedom Theater, a black theater company that's been in existence for years. And so there is this important kind of understanding that this has to be incorporated in. This is a city that recognizes and has leadership now that reaches very deeply to the black community. And I think it's very important that you activate that part of this project as part of what you're working on. I'm sure you will, but I mean, I just think it's very important for you to add this piece of it. This is also true about one of the great building we're seeing here. There is a new energy and there are new players here. And it's really important to think about how that changes the equation of what you're doing. VIA will be ultimately a leadership form of what goes on Broad Street. It's going to become a pulsing heart of what happens here. And what John Fry does with the Terra Building will be very interesting because it's an intervention in the center city of Philadelphia, which Temple never had advocated for and has now changed. So I think there are other players here that, and you know them all, that needs to be talked about, and that passion of those people is how you activate people to want to be here. The Avenue of the Arts is 3.5 miles long if you go from Master Street to Ellsworth. The Miracle Mile Chicago, they get some mile. You're dealing with a much bigger space and a much greater potential. And I think that potential is really important. Thank you.
Yeah, I would just like to say in response, and thank you for those points, but this was primarily a design presentation. We, as the Avenue of the Arts, and Desiree and I, we work tirelessly with all the organizations on South Broad Street. Kenny Gamble is a close personal friend of mine. We have an homage to him in the lobby of Art House. I bought his building after it had a partial collapse and an arsonist fire. He's been my partner on other ventures. Members of the organizations that were mentioned by the gentleman are on our board, and I think everybody agrees that trees and flowers are colorblind. By making the street more beautiful, we're attracting people who wouldn't ordinarily come to the street to participate in the very institutions that the gentleman mentioned. So thank you for your comment, and we feel that we are on the same team here. We agree with you. Thank you.
One is the Broad Street Run, the parade, like in the Eagles run, the World Championships. And I feel that all of this greenery on the median is gonna like pull people apart because they won't be able to stand on either side of the street and enjoy the excitement of watching the parade. Number two is I feel that the sidewalks in front of this building have so many Uber Eats, scooters and bicycles, plus you have that garage next to the Kimmel where cars pull in and out, and other homeless people that are wandering around, and so that I don't think that you gave that any consideration in your presentation, the actual problems of being on the sidewalk. And number three is that in front of Symphony House now, pulling out in front of the building and loading is impossible. That now there are only 2 lanes of traffic, and even making a turn into the parking lot has gotten a lot more difficult. So that I don't think that the traffic pattern was thought out well enough, because Broad Street is a main street in the city. It is the street that divides the city from river to river, and so that there's been no attempt to do anything to traffic, like an attempt to do an alternative Broad Street or something. So instead, traffic has become very difficult, dangerous. The sidewalks are not pleasant.
We worked with the streets department to come up with our MPT plan, our maintenance of traffic and protection. And in order to keep the crew at LF Driscoll and all of the subcontractors safe, we had to put these parameters into place. And unfortunately, during this time frame, we have to have 2 lanes of traffic in order to allow the traffic to flow as normal on Broad Street during these work hours. So yes, it's not ideal, I guess, for everyone, but we've been in coordination with Kimmel Center, obviously our partners throughout this block, to do what we can to keep things as safe as possible. And we can report today that there has been no safety concerns for this project.
Yeah. I can't answer that question, but I can say that we're under construction, and the designers have taken the existing loading zones into consideration. I built Symphony House. I lived there for 14 years. People will still be able to pull up and get a taxi cab, and there will still be a loading zone. Right now, in building the median, we've had to take the 2 lanes that are in the center away from traffic so that we could create safety for construction workers. And it's created a zigzag pattern for automobiles. That's not part of the permanent plan. So what you're talking about is just during construction. And there will be loading zones in front of apartment buildings, in front of condominium buildings, in front of the Kimmel Center, so that buses can pull up and deliver, students safely. But what you're critiquing right now is the construction phase, and that construction phase will end fairly soon. There will be another construction phase and another one after that, but as we march down Broad Street. But this is just temporary. Remember, when they built subways, they had to tear up the whole street. And, people complained in New York City when they built the 2nd Street subway, but, after it was completed, people were very, pleased with it. So there's going to be some temporary inconvenience. And we're doing our best, our very best, to keep things safe and keep traffic moving, because we are required to do so by PennDOT.
So we have a few more minutes left, so can we call this the lightning round? And folks, keep your questions brief, keep the answers brief, so we can get everyone a chance.
All right. Go.
I was with the Reagan administration when the first Avenue of the Arts was done in the 90s, and it's interesting to be now seeing the whole avenue being restored again after the first 20 years of its existence, and it's very much overjoyed to me. One of the things we had to think about when we were looking at the first design of the Avenue of the Arts was the parade. Rich alluded to that before. One of the reasons why the median was the way it is because of the numbers company. And I wanted to ask you about that particular concern. That median is as beautiful as it is. How is that? If you think about that, how are you going to incorporate the Mars parade upgrades that are going to use the street?
All right.
Because right now, when we designed it, the median was done specifically because of that issue.
Yeah, it's a question that we discussed at length, and the short answer would be what we said was number one, perhaps there's a way to curate the parade in a way that it plays out on the intersections where we don't have a median, and on the there's an extended area north and south of each intersection that has left turn lanes that has no median. Maybe it needs to be curated around those spaces. On this block, it makes up about, I think, an aggregate of almost half of the block has no median because of those intersection situations. So I think there's a way around this. And the other part of the answer would be that it's one of those balancing acts that we needed to do, accommodating the parade once a year, element of great pride in Philadelphia, of course, but for the rest of the year, we have a beautiful boulevard that everybody can enjoy. So I think there's a compromise there to recurate the way the parade is done around those intersection spaces that are wide open.
Lightning round. Right. Understood.
I want to answer his music question. The music question.
A museum.
Museum. Oh, he said museum.
Museum of the city of Philadelphia. Yes, build a museum. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm a native son of Philadelphia. Grew up in West Oak Lane, went to Central High School, went to Penn, the whole thing. And I watched the city change for the worse, unfortunately, during a couple of decades. The 60s and 70s were difficult times for the city. And, I lived in New York. I'm going to tell you is this. Somebody has to do something with City Hall. For God's sakes, it's magnificent. It took 30 years to build. The Quakers were against putting any sculpture on it. They had great power in the city in those days. So I strongly recommend you take a look at City Hall, give it the attention that it absolutely deserves as an international building.
Thank you, sir. Yeah.
Your last one that you've been waiting a long time, but we do have to wrap up. I'm really sorry.
All right, last question. Make it a good one.
Very quickly, as you all know, Broad Street is a major corridor. There's a lot of vehicular traffic. One of the things that I know in my time here is that those concrete medians, particularly a little north of here, people use them as pedestrian sort of refuges and refuge islands. If you get stuck, if you have physical disabilities, you can't cross the street in time. I know there was a passing mention of curb bump outs, and the renderings that we're showing today almost look like those islands would be eliminated for pedestrian use, and so I'm just wondering if you can speak a little bit more to the real human impact of crossing a street with these like planters and things in place. Thank you.
Absolutely. So I would highlight, and we probably, like you said, didn't get enough justice to it, but I think there is real consideration about kind of the time it takes to cross the street. And I think when we move on to phase 1B, kind of that sheltered space for pedestrians to reduce the time it takes to cross the street is a real consideration that we're going to be taking into consideration when we're going through the design as well.
All right, everyone, please join me in thanking this group for coming.
All right.
We may hit you up and drag you back in here to talk about future phases as they move down the boulevard or down the avenue. So thank you all for coming out. We will be back here in a month, June 17th, talking about transit with Leslie Richards, former CEO of SEPTA. So enjoy your evening. Appreciate where we are. This is an amazing space we have, and I'll see you next month.
Thank you.